She was just a janitor, a silent shadow in the grand hallways of a billion-dollar company. No one noticed her. No one even knew her name, until one day, the CEO overheard something that would change both of their lives forever. Every morning, Elena arrived before the sun. She mopped the marble floors of Phoenix Holdings while the world still slept. She wore worn-out sneakers and a name tag that read simply, cleaning staff. The elevators never waited for her. The high heels never paused beside her bucket. She was invisible to most. But Elena? Elena had secrets, not dark ones, but dazzling ones. Inside her head danced fluency in French, German, Mandarin, Russian, Italian, Spanish, and flawless English. 7 languages she had mastered in the shadows of libraries and on dusty secondhand books. Why? Because Elena once dreamed of being a linguist at the United Nations. That was before life hit her family with debt, before she traded dreams for duty. Now, she cleaned the offices of millionaires, quietly and with dignity. But fate has a strange way of listening when we least expect it. One late evening, while wiping down a conference room table, she heard someone struggling, grumbling actually, into a phone. It was Mr. Grant, the CEO, tall, always rushed, always commanding, surrounded by people who hung on his every word. Except now, he looked frustrated, trying to communicate with a client in Paris. His French? A disaster. Elena hesitated. Her heart pounded. Her mind raced. This was not her place. But then she spoke. One sentence. In perfect Parisian French. Monsieur, peut-être j'ai pourvoiture? The room froze. Mr. Grant turned sharply, his brows furrowed. Phone still pressed to his ear. Was that you? He asked, stunned. Elena lowered her eyes, nodded, and gently took the phone from him. In a matter of seconds, she transformed the chaotic call into smooth diplomacy. The French client smiled. The deal was secured, and Mr. Grant? He was speechless. For the first time in years, he couldn't find the right words. But Elena could, in 7 different languages. That night didn't end there. Come to my office, he said, still in disbelief. She followed, unsure of what she had just done. He asked her to sit. She stood. He asked where she learned all that. She told him the truth. Books, free apps, practice, and passion. He asked her why she never said anything. She smiled, because no one ever asked. The silence in that moment said more than any word could. And then came the moment that would shift her destiny. How would you feel, he asked slowly, about working with me, not cleaning up after me? Elena's eyes widened. Was this a test? A joke? But he was serious, dead serious. And in that moment, something cracked open in the universe. A janitor had just been offered a position as his personal interpreter, a job that came with travel, power, responsibility, and money, real money. For the first time in her life, she felt the wind of possibility blowing in her direction. But that was only the beginning. The next morning, Elena didn't wear her cleaning uniform. She wore a navy blue blazer she had picked up from a secondhand store years ago. It still had a loose thread at the sleeve, but it was the best she had. Her hands trembled slightly as she stepped into the executive wing, not to mop, not to sweep, but to begin again. Mr. Grant greeted her with a firm nod. His usual cold demeanor softened by curiosity. You're early, he said. Old habits, she replied with a quiet smile. And just like that, she stepped into a new world. One filled with rich clients, million-dollar negotiations, and conference calls in 6 languages. Elena was no longer invisible. She was essential. And the people who once passed her without a glance, they now waited for her translations with held breath. But stepping into wealth doesn't mean you've escaped poverty. Not overnight. While her new job brought a generous salary, Elena still lived in a modest 1-bedroom apartment. She still counted every dollar, still sent money to her mother back home. Her wealth was growing, but her roots kept her grounded. That's what made her different in this world of suits and status. She didn't chase fortune. She earned it word by word, and Mr. Grant noticed that. She wasn't just smart, she was grounded. He admired her work ethic, her discipline, her loyalty, and though he never said it out loud, he began to rely on her, not just as an interpreter, but as a voice of reason in a boardroom full of ego. Weeks passed, then months. Elena traveled with Mr. Grant to Tokyo, Berlin, Dubai. Her passport, once blank, now carried the stamps of luxury. first-class flights, five-star hotels, a lifestyle she had only seen in movies. But even with the shine of that new life, Elena kept her kindness. She greeted hotel staff in their native language. She tipped generously. She never forgot what it felt like to be ignored. And that's exactly what made people love her. She wasn't trying to be rich. She was just trying to be better. But with that humility came something unexpected. One evening, after a long day of meetings in Rome, Mr. Grant invited her to dinner, not as an employee, but as a friend. "You've changed this company," he said over a glass of red wine. "You've changed me." Elena was surprised. "All I did was speak." He looked at her, then really looked. "No, Elena, you listened. You understood. You saw people." The air between them shifted. Was it admiration? Was it more? She felt it too. But she wasn't sure what to do with it. After all, he was a billionaire CEO. She was still paying off student loans. What kind of future could they possibly have? And then, just as things were getting closer, came the twist. A mysterious email leaked to the media accused Elena of falsifying her credentials. "Janitor lies her way to the top," one headline screamed. It spread like wildfire. Investors panicked. Board members demanded explanations. And Mr. Grant? He was silent. Dead silent. Elena's world began to crumble. In 1 week, she went from valuable asset to corporate liability. Her face was on gossip sites. Her inbox flooded with hate. No one asked for her side of the story. No one but her. She stood before the board not with a lawyer, but with her story, her truth. She showed them her old notebooks, her language certifications, her library cards. "I never lied," she said firmly. "You just never believed someone like me could be someone like this." The room was quiet, too quiet. And Mr. Grant? He hadn't shown up. She walked out devastated, fired, rejected, betrayed. It felt like the end. But Elena had been at the bottom before, and she wasn't about to stay there. Elena's name was dragged through the mud. News outlets, blogs, even viral TikToks called her a fraud, a gold digger, a social climber who had fooled the rich and powerful. But what they didn't know, what they never even tried to learn, was that Elena had receipts, literal ones. She documented every step of her journey, every language course completed, every certification earned, every book borrowed from the public library. She had no university degree, it was true, but her mind held a wealth no diploma could contain. And now, stripped of her job and branded by the media, Elena did what very few could. She stood back up, and she started over again. This time not as a janitor, but as a teacher. Elena launched an online platform called Linguarize, teaching languages through short, powerful lessons. Many of them filmed from her tiny apartment kitchen. "Learn like I did," she said to the camera. No fancy school, no big budget, just consistency. At first it was slow, a few views, a few comments. Then one of her videos went viral. Her breaking down Mandarin tones using a spoon and a glass of water. People were amazed, not just by her teaching, but by her story. "Is this the janitor who spoke 7 languages?" someone commented. It spread like wildfire again, but this time not in hate, in awe. Within a month, her channel exploded. Tens of thousands of followers, then hundreds, then a partnership offer from a major edtech brand. Her wealth grew fast, but this time it was hers, built with her own hands, her own voice. Meanwhile, across the city, Mr. Grant watched all of this unfold in silence. The board had forced her out, but he had allowed it. He hadn't defended her, and it haunted him. He kept replaying their last conversation, the last look in her eyes, that mixture of hurt and strength. He had fallen for her, but he had also failed her, miserably. So when her channel hit 1 million subscribers and she was featured in Forbes as the self-taught language queen, he sent her an email. Just one line: "I owe you more than an apology." Elena didn't reply. She had already moved forward. Her fortune grew not just in money, but in impact. People from all over the world messaged her. Immigrants, single moms, janitors, refugees. They said she gave them hope, that she made them believe intelligence wasn't tied to a title, that they too could rise. Elena cried reading some of those messages. She dreamed of wealth once, but this was worth more than gold. Then came an offer she never expected. The United Nations reached out. They had seen her TED talk, Fluency from Floors. They wanted her to consult on a project teaching displaced children through mobile learning in multiple languages. Elena stood in front of a room of diplomats. The very dream she'd once swept floors to survive. And she belonged. Every word, every sentence, every syllable carried weight, carried history, carried power. And just when she thought life had given her all it could, Mr. Grant showed up at the UN event. Not in a suit, not with an entourage. Alone. He waited until after the applause, then approached her quietly. "I was wrong," he said. "Not just about you, about everything." Elena looked at him composed. "Strong." "I know," she replied. There was no anger, just clarity. "So what now?" he asked. She thought for a moment. "Now, I teach. You learn." A soft smile broke across his face. And with that, the story took one more unexpected turn. Not of revenge, not of bitterness, but of reconnection, of new beginnings. Months passed, and what began as a cautious reconnection slowly evolved into something deeper. Elena and Mr. Grant, now simply James in her world, started meeting regularly, not in boardrooms, but in cafes, at bookstores, even at language workshops she hosted for underprivileged students. James began volunteering, quietly helping behind the scenes, asking questions, and most importantly, listening. He wasn't the same man who once judged her by her uniform. He was humbled, changed, and captivated by the woman who had risen from janitor to millionaire entrepreneur, not with luck, but with grit, brilliance, and a voice that had reached across continents. And though money still surrounded them, luxury, wealth, influence, Elena never let it define their story. "Money can open doors," she told him once, "but only character keeps them open." The world watched their unlikely bond grow. Rumors swirled. Headlines teased, billionaire CEO and language star reconnect after viral scandal. But Elena ignored the noise. She was focused on impact. She had expanded Linguarize into 6 new countries, hiring instructors from underserved communities, paying them generous salaries, and providing free access to thousands of students. She reinvested most of her fortune into building a legacy, not a lifestyle. She didn't need a mansion or a sports car to feel rich. Her wealth was in her mission. And James, for once, wasn't leading the charge. He was learning how to follow and how to support without overshadowing. But life, with all its poetic symmetry, had one more twist to offer. A major education conglomerate tried to buy out Linguarize. The offer? $20 million. Enough to retire. Enough to be set for life. Her investors urged her to sell. Her legal team said it was smart business. Even James, cautiously, suggested she consider it. But Elena sat quietly with the offer for days. Then she gave her answer. Know why? Because they don't understand what we're building. They see profit. I see people. The board was stunned. Some walked away. Others stayed. But Elena knew. True wealth isn't measured in zeros. It's measured in the lives you touch, the voices you empower, and the courage to walk away from easy money when it costs you your purpose. James watched her in that moment with something deeper than admiration. He saw her not as the woman who changed his company or the scandal that nearly wrecked his reputation. He saw her as the person who changed him. I used to think I was rich, he confessed to her one night, but I never knew what real fortune was until I met you. Elena smiled, and I used to think I had to prove my worth to people like you. But now I know I never had to. I was always enough. They stood on the rooftop of her modest HQ, overlooking the city lights. Not a castle, not a penthouse, but a place built with honesty, with resilience, with soul. A place where a janitor became a millionaire by teaching the world to listen. Then came a surprising turn. James stepped back into the spotlight, but this time not alone. He publicly apologized for his silence during the scandal. He shared Elena's full story, credited her for the global success of the company, and offered her an equal partnership in a brand new initiative, the Global Voices Foundation, a nonprofit aimed at providing free language education to refugees and underserved youth across the globe. Elena accepted, but only under one condition. She'd lead it her way, and so they built something together, not just a foundation, but a legacy, a bridge between two worlds. the one she came from, and the one she conquered. Years later, Elena stood in front of a sea of graduates at a prestigious international summit in Geneva. She was the keynote speaker, flanked by heads of state, Nobel laureates, and tech billionaires. But she didn't wear designer brands or speak in lofty academic jargon. No, she stepped to the mic in her simple blazer, her voice warm, her presence grounded, and said, "Once upon a time, I cleaned floors in the building behind this very institution. People used to look through me, but now they listen." The audience was silent, hanging on her every word. I wasn't poor because I lacked intelligence. I was poor because the world thought intelligence only came with a degree or a title. But language taught me something money never could. It taught me to connect. And that is the greatest fortune any of us can build. As she stepped down from the stage, Elena's eyes locked with James's in the front row. Their journey had taken them from elevator glances to a global mission, from suspicion to trust, from separation to something quietly, steadily powerful. Love had bloomed, but not the kind that swept in like storm. Theirs was the kind that grew from mutual respect, shared vision, and time. Elena never needed saving. She simply needed someone who believed. And when James learned to do that, everything changed. Back at her office, still modest, still full of heart, Elena received a letter, handwritten. It was from a young girl in Nigeria who had watched her videos in secret, against her parents' wishes. "Now I speak 4 languages," the letter read, "and I'm teaching others in my village. One day I want to be like you." Elena cried, not out of pride, but out of clarity. This was wealth. This was purpose. Not the millions in her bank account, not the awards, but that letter, that ripple, that voice echoing back across the ocean saying, "You changed my life." And just like that, her story, one that began with mops and late-night shifts, became a map for countless others. A map that showed that even in a world ruled by money, fortune doesn't always wear a suit. Sometimes it wears janitor shoes and speaks 7 languages. Because in the end, it's not about where you start. It's about how fiercely you believe you can rise. If this story touched your heart, leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below what part moved you the most. Thank you so much for watching, and see you soon.